Good evening. I'm Trishana McGowan and my co-host Neville Bell.
Hey, Trishana, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you just fine. Good evening. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
I've had better days.
Oh, you've had better days. All right, so we are here as you know, this is all about the Dominic Alessandro James Foundation.
Seems as if we have lost Neville Bell there. And like he was telling you, the foundation of the late Dominic James, who passed away during the moment of playing football for St. George's College. And, still a moment we all cannot forget. And the foundation was formed. And here they are doing wonderful things because we're having our first town hall courtesy of the Dominic James Foundation. And we are happy for those that have joined in, and we're hoping that you all will enjoy our company for 90 minutes. We're going to be with you for 90 minutes. But even though we know you love Neville Bell and myself, we have some very competent experts that will be joining us, and they will take us through answering your questions and Neville and I questions that we have about how COVID mash up our sports. And we're focusing on, of course, high school sports for the next 90 minutes. And we have, like I told you, a very good panel. And we are going to, let's just check if Neville is back. Neville, are you back? All right, so still nothing from Neville as yet. So what we're gonna do for you before we start asking questions and doing interviews, we're gonna throw to a video.
Greetings, everybody. Denise and I would really like to thank you all for joining us in the first event launched by the Dominic Alessandro James Foundation. The foundation was launched a year ago, and it was launched with the distinct purpose of keeping Dominic's memory going. As you are aware, he passed away 4 years ago, and it was while he was enjoying himself playing football for his school. The purpose of the foundation is really to assist high school level students who have great potential, and we really want them to realize on those potential. And so we want to play our part. We know that there are others out there doing something. We want to add to that body to assist athletes. Now, in all things, God has to be present, and He blesses us with everything. So we want to thank Him for inspiring us to do this and inspiring others to help us to carry it out. I must say thank you to a number of persons tonight. Firstly, I start with the board of directors who have done a wonderful job working tirelessly to get this foundation going. We have built it from the ground up and continue to build. I want to also say a special thanks to the project team that labored on this project to make it a reality tonight. And we trust that you will benefit greatly. We thank you also, Mr. Bell, the patron, for being so gracious in accepting that role. And you were Dominic's last coach. And so you are very attached to this particular foundation. And Mr. Bell is known everywhere, so he continues to help us to build awareness about the foundation. Thank you, Mr. Bell. We want to thank the sponsors, Kids Hub Media Network, Inc., for their technical and financial support. Team Jamaica Bickle is also a wonderful support element. They have provided advisory and financial services over the period and even before the foundation was formally launched. Thank you, Jamaica Bickle. Thanks to the panelists for giving of their time and their invaluable expertise. You'll hear them tonight, and they certainly will give you things to think about. Our co-host, we thank you for the proceedings that you will be directing with skillfulness. Thanks also to Louis Matalon, who was the producer of the flyers that you see advertising the event. Louis, we have bothered you time and time again as we changed things on the flyer, but you remain patient. We are very gracious. Thank you for the listeners and the viewers who will participate and benefit from this exercise tonight. We ask that you not be fearful or timid in asking your questions and giving your concerns and suggestions. We look forward to hearing them. Thanks again for joining us tonight, and we look forward to the night's proceedings. Thank you.
And that was such a lovely message from the father of the late Dominic James, David James. And checking again to see if my lovely Patreon co-host is back with me. Neville Bell?
I am hearing you loud and clear. I'm right here.
Wonderful. Happy to have you back. So that message came from David James. He said that you were the last coach for Dominic James. I don't want to get too much into it because I know still a sore point for you, and you can break into tears at any point in time.
Wonderful young man, very unfortunate, but amazing parents, and still can't. What hurts helps, because when I see what the parents do, then I know that I should be in a good place also. We have some folks with us. Keith Wellington, as we said, is the president of the Intersecondary School Sports Association. He's a principal of St. Elizabeth Technical High School. He's right there. Mr. Wellington, good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Evening, I'm hearing you.
Okay,
I'm hearing you.
Great to have you with us.
Good evening, Tishana.
Good evening, Mr. Wellington.
Great to have you with us, sir. And I know you just took over Intersecondary School Sports Association at a very difficult time. Tell us what's going on now. I read recently that you said boys and girls champs will still happen, but there are so many other sports that you have to run, netball, everything else. Tell me what's happening right now and what it looks like in the near future.
All right, good evening, everyone, and it would be remiss of me without to not say good evening to everyone involved. Thanks for this opportunity. Good evening to Denise and David. I know they have been working very hard to keep the memory of Dominic going, and we at ISSA would like to acknowledge what a lovely young man he was. He's what we would consider a model student athlete, and I think that it is good that the foundation is seeking to go this route by helping to build all our student athletes, to provide them with the opportunities that Dominic would have taken up had he been around today. So right now we are still in the process of making plans for our activities for the final 2 terms of the school year. The major thing on our calendar now would be plans for boys and girls champs, because we think that although we are not yet certain what will maintain in another 3 or 4 months from now, we want to put all the plans in place to ensure that we provide the opportunities for our student athletes to participate. But while that is our major activity plan for the final 6 months of the school year, we're also looking at other activities that we can get our student athletes engaged in. It may be physical activities, meaning competitive sporting activities, definitely not in the formats that we have become accustomed to. But if conditions don't allow us to have these physical activities, we're also looking to have virtual activities like these, where we can share with our student athletes. We can provide opportunities for them to learn about their different sporting activities and the opportunities that exist for them in the various sports. One of the key things we also want to do virtually is to look at how we can offer training, official training in the officiating, field of officiating, especially in football, basketball, and netball. So those are the major activities that we have planned for the final 6 months of the school year.
What about, as I said, the other sports, so netball, basketball? Is there any idea of any one of those sports will be played?
Yes, we did. As I said before, we have been making plans, but these plans will be tentative, of course, based on the fact that we don't know exactly what will be happening in another 2 months or so. But we have a plan for February, going back to June, where we are going to have activities, all the sports that we offer. We are looking to have activities related to those sports. As I said, we can't yet commit to any sort of physical competition, but if there's no opportunity for us to have any physical activity, we will have virtual activities. And as I said, for the physical activities, we are looking at 6-week blocks where we may have football during the 6 weeks, netball during the 6 weeks, cricket during the 6 weeks, volleyball, all the different sports that we offer. We will have some activities. What type of activities is going to be dependent on what is happening at the time. And we are looking at either physical activities, virtual activities, or a combination of both. So those right. Physical activities will actually be games. I don't want to call them competitions because they are not going to be like what we have become accustomed to, but there will be opportunities for students to physically participate in these sports. And then there will be virtual events like this one, or like where we are looking at especially focusing on training in officiating in the major sports that we offer, because we have a serious problem in officiating, and we are going to be partnering with the National Association to offer that sort of training for some of our senior student athletes, where they can matriculate into being officials in netball, basketball, and football in particular.
Okay, thanks, Mr. President, and we will come back to you. Tishana, Coach
yes,
David Riley.
Mr. Welling. Yes, I have David Riley. Good questions there from my co-host Bertis Bell. But I have one question for you, Mr. Wellington, President. You spoke about, things clearly cannot be the same because of the COVID-19 pandemic. You spoke to the Jamaica Observer published today. You spoke about champs. If it should be held, whichever format of it, it will be a case where it is done still in March. The question is, why not April? Why I ask that is, I've spoken to a few coaches, island-wide, and they are at this point in time, clearly because everyone is affected, but there are at least maybe 4.
Trishana, I've lost you a bit. I don't know if your listeners are hearing me.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Right, so let me just try and answer. I think I get the gist of what Trishana is asking. So I think there was a slight misquote from the Observer article. I spoke with Paul about it. So we are going ahead with plans for March. Right, so all our plans now will be for a March championships. David is here. David is a part of our technical committee, and we have had extensive discussions with all our stakeholders about the dates. So far, we have 2 dates in mind. We have a March date and a May date. Right now, the advice that we are getting from our stakeholders is that we should plan for the March event, and if it cannot happen, then we will revert to our May date. Reason being for the March date is that for our major stakeholders, well, some of our major stakeholders, it is felt that it is difficult for them to have 2 championships in one financial year. So if we were to have it in May, it would mean that our sponsors, and you know that especially in a time like this, is going to be difficult to stage a championship without some serious funding. So we are considering that March option. The advice that we have gotten from our technical committee, including our coaches as well, is that while it is a little bit challenging for only 12 to 16 weeks of preparation, it is something that can be done, especially in the context where we are looking at champs, not necessarily as a championship where everybody wants to win, but a comeback, a coming out championship where we want to say to Jamaica, to the rest of Jamaica, that we are up and running again, and the opportunity is here for you, for student athletes, to participate. This will be a long year. The World Juniors is in July, and so there are going to be opportunities for students to participate right up to July. But we are going to be planning for March. But if it is not safe to do so, then we will go to the May dates.
All right. I don't know if Trishana is back. Are you back, Trishana?
Yes, I am. Yes,
right.
I'm back, Neville.
Okay.
Okay, so
Coach
thank
David,
you for that, Keith.
Can you hear us, Coach David?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Let me just ask the first question before I throw to Trishana. I know you were one of the coaches who did not think that the Boys and Girls Championship should have been called off, but it was. So we move on from that. What have you been doing with your athletes since then? Have you kept training? What have you been doing?
Well, I mean, because of how we understand the sport and understand preparation, there are aspects of the preparation of the athletes for competition that they can do on their own. It doesn't always require a coach's supervision, and it can be done by the athlete who is motivated. And track and field is best done by persons who are self-motivated. And so the student athletes who are highly self-motivated can follow a training program without a coach standing over them. And so what we also have done is to look at the different training components, the fitness components, I should say, and allow the students to do the development of those outside of an organized, supervised training environment. We've also used online platforms, and we have weekly, sometimes there's some groups that are online twice per week in terms of just doing monitored workouts by the coaches online. That is something that we had to plan properly and make sure it's structured so that there is great benefit to that. So there are things that you can do. I mean, it would be best to have everybody in the same place, but practically it's not possible. So we've just been able to engage them, and they're in good shape.
Yeah, Shoshana?
Yeah. David, we are on the topic about the impact, because we have 3 segments. You're a coach, there at Excelsior. Talk to us about the impact this has really had on your team personally.
Well, it has it had a great impact, and the impact varies whether from the athlete who's in their final year and the athlete who's just new to the sport. A lot of times, this is a success that people have that cause them to still push and stay in the sport. And so whenever they don't get an opportunity, and we have to understand that children reason things different from adults. So when a child misses an opportunity, it's not, we shouldn't expect them to reason it like adults and say, well, okay, I'll just bounce back. Resilience is something you learn over a very long time in your life. And so many have actually exited the sport, unfortunately. Some have actually, because of the fact they were plunged into a period of inactivity, they've gained weight. It's now frustrating for them to restart because they think it's too hard, and they're so unfit and they're not accustomed to be in that state. And so many are not as strong psychologically to endure and to bounce back. And these are things that people will learn over time. It's not necessarily their fault, but it's just the overall, you know, effect and the performance and some of the things that affect athletes.
Our athletes are, student athletes are very dear to me. When you spoke about, you were one of the coaches that wanted champs to be held. Without that, many would have missed scholarship maybe for last year, some looking for that this year. How do you think we can go about, maybe, you know, you're one of the best advisors for Keith Wellington and others. How do you think we can go about that going forward?
Well, I think it actually has to, well, it has resulted in a change in how we approach student athletes and scholarships. Frankly, this experience has really helped me to restructure my own plans so that we can get athletes to get the performances that would qualify for scholarship, not necessarily in their final year, not waiting for an athlete to be in their final year for them to have that type of performance. So get them in a state where they can qualify for scholarships. And so if they don't have a final year, then it's not a major blow. That's something I think that the pandemic has helped to reorientate our minds towards. So athletes who would be waiting specifically for champs, also having them deliver great performances prior to champs. That actually helped a lot of the athletes this year with some of the regional meets where they were able to go out in great shape for trials, where many of our athletes who got scholarships, their performances came from corrective trials or from the regional meet. And so, you know, it kind of will force coaches to maybe give the athlete a great performance opportunity prior to champs, that they, you know, if something happens at champs, as with the case of the pandemic, they're not all left high and dry.
By the way, Coach, would you win? Would you win champs, Coach? Were you going to win? Were you going to win champs, Coach?
Well, you know what? I didn't win 2019, but we won the last race, and I know you can't forget that. We're going after the last race again.
Thanks, my friend. Also with us is the head track and field coach at Alphonsus Davis High School, which was formerly Spalding High, Megan Wilson Copeland. Megan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good evening, everyone.
Great to have you with us, Megan. And then again, I'll ask the first question, and Trishana will take it. What about you, Coach? How tough was it to not have boys and girls champ? Well, I think you're the girls coach. Maybe you're a national junior coach. But what was it like for you, and what have you done with your athletes since then?
Well, it was devastating for my team and myself, because I had, even though my team was very small, but I had quality athletes who were looking forward to winning their event at champs and gaining some points for our school so that we could finish in the top 8, because we have finished 9th overall at last champs. So we were looking for at least one place up. So we were very devastated, but what I did is try to motivate my athletes and have them know that it's a pandemic and it's happening everywhere over the world, and there's nothing that we can do about it at the moment. But we were disappointed. But nevertheless, I keep communication with them. We suddenly, after we heard that champs was cancelled, but we keep communication. So we have sessions that we could motivate each other. We have WhatsApp groups and so forth. So we communicate by video calling each other. I encourage them also to do their little exercises on their own. So that's what we did when that news hits us about not having champs.
Yeah. Megan, you are one of the few female coaches of, you know, in our track and field. We talk about the impact, but there's so many things. Even our patron and co-host Never Bell can attest to that. Let's talk about the nutrition aspect of it and so many other things that the school helps to provide because these children may be not able to afford it, their households. How has that been for you as a coach, knowing that what you normally, how you cushion them, the things that you usually do, it's no longer happening for a lot of them?
Well, when we look at that aspect of nutrition in terms of our team, as I said, we are a small team, and it's very challenging during the season, the track seasons. We had it rough because you know that we don't have a sponsor for our track and field team. So everything that we do in terms of nutrition, training gear, and all of that stuff, we have to depend on the school or one or two persons in the community that would supply us with some resources. The parents on a whole played a very important part where nutrition is concerned with the students, because we have selected students who stayed on the school dorm, and the parents provide their dorm fees, and that's what we use to cover their food and so forth. The school will help us some of the days with Gatorade and some other stuff, and stuff like when we are going on to track and field meets and so forth, the school will provide that. But the parents play a very important part in terms of the nutrition for the kids on the dorm. And where nutrition, where that is concerned, what I have to do, because I have to work out a meal plan or what the dorm mother would cook each day with the little resources that we have in terms of money. So I work out the meal plan, and we'll buy a certain amount of food that will serve them for each week, because that's how the parents would pay. They would pay the dorm fee when they have the money. So we have to work it out so that everybody can eat each day. Sometimes I have to even take money out of my pocket or to buy stuff so that they can eat each day also.
Yeah, I know it's a tough life for coaches. People outside of sports sometimes are unaware of that you take sometimes your own salary to help and provide for them, to make sure that they have bus fare, food to eat, and so many other things. So I have one quick question for Mr. Wellington before we leave this segment. President of ISSA and principal of SET, that aspect of it, how concerned are you guys, ISSA, that is about what's really happening mentally with a lot of the athletes and physically, and how you think that if everything should pick up in January or whenever in 2021, can they bounce back mentally and physically like we once had them?
All right, so just a reminder that ISSA is an association of principals. So all our schools are represented by their principals at ISSA. So even our regular conversations, when we're talking about exams or we're talking about ministry activities, we have an understanding amongst ourselves about what our students are going through, not just the student athletes, because what is happening now has affected every single person. We know that there has been a serious drain on the mental capacity of our students, whether they participate in sports or not. And while this is an event about sports, it is instructive to note that the effect of COVID is widespread. It has affected all of them very, very, very seriously. Those who are involved in sports usually depend a little bit more on the school for support. And so many of our principals have had to find ways of ensuring that our student athletes are looked after. Some schools would have, during the period, kept them together in small groups. So I know, for example, that for me, I have had maybe about, since March, I have had about 10 student athletes, footballers in particular, who have remained with us on campus because they just don't have the wherewithal at home. If they went home, we would have probably lost them because there's little support for them at home. And I'm sure all schools are like that in terms of having to offer the support. Whether or not they'll be ready when when sport resumes is really dependent on how each school would have been able to help them. We have encouraged our principals to continue to look out for our student athletes, to have programs, and ministry, as a matter of fact, has also been encouraging schools to ensure that there are psychosocial activities planned for students. So it's not just about having them online for classes, but there are activities around that takes care of the mental well-being of our students.
All right, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. President. So we want to look at a couple more things, and Trishana brought up the mental aspect and the physical aspect, and we're going to go into our next session tonight, and we'll be speaking with Dr. Crystal McGregor. We will talk with Dr. Claudia Marshall, and we will also speak with Dr. Derek McDowell. So I think, Dr. McGregor, are you there with us?
Hi,
Can you hear me, Dr. McGregor?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Really great that you're on the program with us, and it's fantastic to see Dr. McGregor, Dr. Marshall, and Dr. McDowell. How would it hurt an athlete that we never had boys and girls champs, especially the final year athletes? And I think that was one of the concerns that they were going off. They want to get scholarships and stuff, and they never had their final year. How difficult would that be? Would the recruiters have seen them maybe in class 3 and class 2 and know what they're all about? Or is it just going to be very, very difficult for an athlete to get a scholarship having not performed this season?
So I think that's a difficult question because it varies on based on the institution and the university. I think from my prior experience as a coach, I believe that it really depends on how much money that university has. And with many track and field programs being cut down in the United States, then that kind of limits how much student athletes they're able to recruit. In addition to that, you think about bringing an international student to the United States. There are different challenges with that as well, due to the fact that COVID has now impacted the entire country or the entire world with traveling restrictions and such. So I think it varies and it makes it a little bit more difficult in this season.
Back to part of the first question still, would they have seen these athletes before, or do they just look at the final year athletes?
That's a question I can't really say yes or no to that, because again, every coach recruits differently.
Okay.
I think you have over the years, thanks Neville. I think over the years, athletes, from early class 2, when they do 2 years in class 2, some coaches will start taking a look at them depending on how outstanding they might be in an event. So that I think that too, Neville, will afford an athlete an opportunity to not miss the boat if they're that solid in class 2 and remain the same way in class 1 to get a scholarship. But then the problem comes in for maybe those who are late bloomers that will know, it's not even to say burst onto the scene, but more so just having a really standout season and maybe missing that opportunity. How does that affect one mentally, Dr. McGregor, if their body's feeling good and they're really excited about this could maybe be my season, and then came COVID, no boys and girls championship, probably no scholarship.
Right, it's a hard one, it's difficult, right? And I think it's even more difficult for student athletes because when you think about it, you've committed to training for so long, right? And especially if you were a late bloomer and you notice that, in your last year, like now the times were dropping, you were going faster and jumping further and all these good things, and then bam, COVID happens. And so now when that, with that, it makes things a little bit more complicated. But now what I've been working with a few student athletes, and what I've been telling them side, because there's still an opportunity for you to get an academic scholarship, right? And then at some point, if you do get to that institution, you could then transition over to whatever sport team you want to be a part of once you get here.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to Dr. Marshall, who is a professional counselor. Dr. Marshall, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear. Great to have you. Emma, great to have you with us. What do you tell a parent like myself, whose son, whose daughter had never had an opportunity to perform this year, and I'm very, very disappointed, depressed, and as a parent, I'm not too certain how to handle this. What do you tell them?
Yes, definitely. So when you think of the impact that COVID has had on just the sport in general, or just students, like Mr. Wellington was saying earlier, what I would say is talk to your child, right? There needs to be an opportunity for them to communicate with you about how they're feeling, what is going on with them, and how this is impacting them, right? I would tell them to look for changes in the child. So I know Mr. Wellington and Mr. Riley really hit on it earlier when they talked about how this can manifest differently for different students. And I want to stress that you want to look for a change in behavior. Mr. Riley said something really interesting earlier, and my counselor mind went directly to, that was a great point to check in with the student. Because one thing we know is when students are experiencing depression and anxiety, they can gain weight or they could lose weight because there's a change in their appetite, right? So we want to look for changes in behaviors. Are they acting out and we're just thinking that they're doing this for no reason? No, this might be how they're communicating what they're experiencing. Are they eating more? Are they eating less? Is there a change in their sleeping pattern? So I would really tell parents to pay attention to your child's behavior and talk to them. Leave that room for open communication. And then lastly, I would say model what you want to see. So our kids are an extension of ourselves, and they do what they see, not what they hear, right? And it's stressful for everyone, including parents. So you have to show them that you're taking care of you as well. You have to show them that you are communicating how you're feeling and how this is impacting you as well. So those are the three main things that I would really say to parents at this time.
Yeah, Dr.
Depending
Marshall,
on who you
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Shauna.
Okay, you spoke about talking. For a lot of student athletes or athletes in general, outlet is sports. I mean, it might be bad that they're not able to communicate very well verbally, whether with coaches or at home. But how do you how do you get that aspect? Because a lot of coaches, even coaches, managers, sports is an outlet. That is their go-to. That's where they zone in. That's where they lose themselves. How do you get them now to become verbally open at expressing their frustration and so many things, since they're not able to now do that on the track, on the field, on the court, and so on? What would you now advise them, to do?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And one thing I taught about is, as a former student athlete myself, you want to come up here and say, I know what you're going through, but you don't, because I am not going through it. So while I can empathize, right, I have to understand that they are the ones going through it. So what I would say to parents and coaches, going back to the point that I made earlier, is really to model. And by model, I mean you talk about it, talk about how it's impacting you using those feeling words, and give that student the vocabulary to use as well. And also normalize, right? Normalize what they're feeling. Normalizing that you might be angry and that is okay. You might be upset because honestly, for some students, not being able to participate in their sporting event of choice, they might be okay with it, but for others, this was really their opportunity, right? I know for me personally, like track was it for me. That was my way to get a scholarship. So when you are in that position, you're going to be angry, you're going to be upset, you are going to be frustrated, you might want to walk away from the sport altogether. So
and people should tell them that it's okay.
Yes, so I'm saying a big part of that is normalizing those feelings to let them know it's okay. We can talk about it. And I understand, why you're feeling this way. So that's one of the big ways to create that environment.
All right, Dr.
Burtis,
Derek,
can I jump in?
Dr. I was just going to introduce you, sir, Dr. Derek. Dr. Derek McDowell. Oh, who's this? The president?
Yes, I wanted to jump in and just add just a little bit to what Dr. Marshall just said. A big part of the problem for us, was the isolation. So other than what happened to them, the fact that they then now had to be apart from their friends created, I think, greater mental pressure on them. So again, depending on how you understood your student athletes, what sort of commitment you had to them, you had to find ways of keeping them together, even though they may not have been able to go and compete together and so on. If we could have found ways of ensuring that in small groups they were together for times, that would have helped.
I agree, and I think Morgan made some great points earlier, like keeping that connection on Zoom, having text message groups. These are still ways to keep connected. Call them to check in with them, because isolation is really a big one as well, and some people cope by isolating. So it's important for us to check in with them and stay connected on a regular basis.
All right, I want to bring in Dr. Derek McDowell, who's a consultant orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine physician. He's a national team doctor. He's a doctor for the Jamaica College High School team, and of course, my good friend. Doc, what about training? If depending on who you speak with, we might not have football for a long time. What do? You keep them in training? What do you do with them? How do you keep the minds active? How do you ensure that they still feel that there is something at the end of the tunnel for them?
Well, Nebel, thanks for having me on this panel. No, Nebel, this is a very difficult situation because the circumstances can be very, very diverse. There are a number of institutions I know that have athletes in camp, like in a bubble situation. However, a lot of the athletes are isolated in various environments, urban environments, talking about inner cities, residential areas, even rural environments. And the athletes at this point in time have to show some amount of self-discipline and self-motivation to keep themselves fit. Juggling a ball, kicking it against a wall, using whatever area they may have. In some of these areas, they have areas which are communal and community areas where they get into a lot of contact with individuals, which they may not necessarily want. But at this point in time, the coaches, can actually help with programs. And Mr. Riley mentioned earlier on where they can be guidance to, in the programs, team guidance, guidance of the individuals. One of the big things I found with some of these players that they're actually competing against themselves. They set themselves targets, Last week I did 10 push-ups in 30 minutes. However, I've now done 10 push-ups in 5 minutes. There's some kind of benchmark as to how well I'm doing. Things like that. The guidance from coaches can actually help the athletes.
They're youngsters, Dr. McDowell. Yeah, they're youngsters, and the Premier League football should have started, and then they call it off until next year. And a lot of the clubs that were training, they stopped training. So these are youngsters, and if they look down the road and they say, "Boy, I coach football now, playing it now, we'll start next year," how difficult it is to get a youngster to say, "Keep training, keep fit, even though you're not certain when you're going to play." How difficult is that?
Well, it has to do with self-motivation and self-discipline. I had one youngster who came to me last week, about 2 weeks ago, asking me if I could put him onto a physical trainer who could write him a program. Now, this youngster had a lot of resources available. He ended up in a gym with a fitness trainer and resources in a gym, and he has actually been a source of inspiration to others. Very, very difficult situation, very difficult when they look down the road. A lot of them are young men who have short attention spans and so on. And of course, the whole issue of contact training and so on, comes into play. But on to self-discipline, and that's what we have to keep them. We have to keep them going. Also, the drive of scholarships and the drive of getting on with life, pushes them ahead. And I think what I found with the EPL and the German league on TV now, a lot of them have gotten back some motivation, some amount of direction, and that's really where we're at.
Yeah, you mentioned the
happy.
EPL. You mentioned one more question, Chisana. You mentioned the EPL.
No
you mentioned the German league. Everything in sport, everything now has to get the okay from the Ministry of Health, from the government. You're a physician. Could we have played anything here?
Neville, you're putting me in some hot water there, but the Ministry of Health and the Public Health Department, they have a fairly good handle on what's happening and how they want things to go, and minimizing spread of COVID and so on. So we have to follow their guidelines. For me, we had a program going at Jamaica College. It was primarily non-contact, however, and people were broken up in small groups, and it worked. Nobody came down with COVID, and people kept fit. And I think for more or less, it's still going on with small groups and people being kept in a bubble, more or less, and training.
Does that mean it could have worked?
It could have. That's what he's telling us.
What's never said that?
I said, does that mean it could have worked?
Never really. We have to experiment, but experiment safely. And of course, whatever we're doing, have to run through the Department of Health, the Public Health Department.
Right.
And this was done, and something can work, but I'm not sure if the Premier League situation could have worked. But it requires a lot of understanding and self-discipline.
Come on.
Dr. McDowell, we'll go on here. Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, so quick question. You spoke about Jamaica College, having some training sessions.
I think I lost you a while ago.
Yeah, I think we lost her. Are you back with us, Shoshana?
I hope I'm not.
So, Doc, same question. No, same question I asked Coach Riley. Would you have one man in cup?
Would I have what?
Would you have one man in cup?
We would have. We would have. And of course, we'd have met George in the finals, and we'd have.
Oh, okay. All right. So we have some other folks in our panel tonight. So we want to look at. We mentioned scholarships. We mentioned academics. Krista Gay Forbes, college prep consultant, coach Andre Virtue, national player, founder of Ballers, and was part of headed the grassroots program. Certainly, if he still does. And Daniel Slowly from Immaculate. Hi, Krista Gay Forbes. Can you hear me? Good evening. Krista Gay. All right. Not hearing Andre. Andre, can you hear me? So we're not getting on.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, hey, Andre. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Coach. I'm great.
Yeah, Ballers International, you have some youngsters working with. Did you do anything during all of this? Have you started anything?
I can hear.
Yeah, I mean, we tried our best to maintain contact with the players. So obviously, we did virtual, we did small group and individual. It really was an attempt to ensure that we kept contact with the players. Some of what my previous panelists mentioned about being in touch with them via WhatsApp, texting them, having Zoom calls, or different ways, as well as not just the players, but with the parents as well.
Yeah, it would be a little bit different for you because you deal with parents to get them to understand that, we really just can't do anything right now. How tough was that for you, and how tough was that for them?
Yeah, well, I mean, as much as they were young, we still have Manning Cup players. We still have some young aspirants who wanted to look for the season to play their final year. But ultimately, adversity comes opportunity. It's really an opportunity to talk with the players. As Dr. Marshall mentioned, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of feelings and thoughts, and it's our part to play in helping them to think it through and to process it. It's going to take some time. But if you share the concerns, you share what they're going through, and model it, as she mentioned, is important because they're not alone. They're not the only. It's not just football. It's not just track and field. It's not just Jamaica. And, you know, it's happening around the world. So, I mean, to draw a reference to what's happening around the world, but at the same time, what can you do? What can you do to work on? There are areas of your game, areas of your life that needs attention, that needs to be worked on. In football seasons or sports seasons, we're too busy. Studying is a challenge because we're trying to find hard to balance. And here it gives us an opportunity to work on the character side of the players, to work on the academic side, in as well as trying our best to still try and, with the small group or individual coaching that we can do.
Andre, Trishana here.
Hi, Trishana, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. You run a very good ship by ballers. What are some of the things that you're doing that you think could be introduced in our high school system so that we whenever we're, because I believe that the onus becomes on the coaches, the managers, the schools to not be able to put the bodies to present something to the government just in case. What do you think we can start doing though to help everyone involved academically, along with showing parents that, okay, yeah man, they can go and play along at this moment, along with doing the sport in the pandemic period?
I think it's a good thing. I think some of the parents, understandably, are a little uncertain as to what will happen. I think part of it is to invite them to be a part of the process, that we don't have all the answers ourselves, and that they need to be a part of that process. Having conversations with them about, you know, projecting, you know, setting smaller goals, shorter goals. So what can we do for the next month? Breaking that down, what can we do for the next 3 months? Even although the uncertainty is there for the new year, have a plan in place. You know, if the government was to open up and give an opportunity, we want to know that we are prepared. And how do we prepare ourselves? We have to communicate, we have to make some plans around what we would want to do. So I don't have the solutions alone, but I think collectively we have a theme set together, we win. And the intention there is that we have to get the feedback from the parents. We have to understand that there's a number of different things that are going on that could prevent. But even though there is the prevention, we have to think about the possibilities that there are. And I think, you know, you hear the word pivoting, you hear the word looking, you know, checking within themselves, or other things that they might be strong at, other areas that they may be able to contribute to. Peer mentoring is also an important thing, and you find when you're able to put them together, you know, there's a lot of learning that can happen, and that process, there's a lot. Sometimes we'll run from that learning, but or those challenges. But I think in the midst of it, they're going to face adversity when they grow up. They're going to face adversity in many situations. So identifying in those moments ways that you can help them to process and to think through, I think, is also meaningful and helpful as well.
Yeah. How do we get them though? I know, especially for boys, not picking on the boys, but I know it can be challenging academically on the boys. I'm not sure if you or anyone on the panel want to, you know, respond to that. I know that in some schools you have, you know, homework programs and so on to help our student athletes so that they strike that balance between academics and sports. Now with them being out of school, some would assume, say, okay, they're a home man. That will be fine. They're supposed to be getting the A's and the B's and so on and keeping up. But I disbelieve that because it requires some amount of discipline. What are your views? How can we get that balance?
Okay.
Well, I think one of the things that we have to do is we also have to communicate to our student athletes that it's even looking for the scholarships and wanting to attain a scholarship. The academic part is important. And when they look at not just the CXC results, but they look at their transcripts. And there's an important part to help them to see the importance of them playing their part. They might not be A students, but they must be attending, they must be giving their best that they can give, even within the difficulties that they face. So I think that even though it's boys, and I believe that they can be great students, they can put their best foot forward by the best that they can. I think the support system around them is important at this time to help them to see that they can work on those areas that they're not well. A previous panelist mentioned that no, we can't get the athletic scholarship. A part of it can be academic. If they do their schoolwork and they put their efforts in trying to improve on the grades, there's a lot. I mean, in this year, SATs are not even used about entering in college. So there are some of those things that if the student athlete is aware of what is important about the academics, it helps them to realize that it can't just be football, it can't just be netball, it can't just be basketball, but there has to be a little balance, and they have to hear it from others. And one of the ways of hearing from others is from other student athletes, who can come and share their story and what they have gone through. And that is something that we have done in this time as well to the existing student athletes with former ones who are away at college.
Mm-hmm. Crystal, are you here?
Yes.
How do we, there are so many student athletes out there looking now to get a scholarship, maybe wanting the chance to, but they're not, without maybe like a major championship, they're going to question, how do I get, maybe an academic sports scholarship? What can they do? I went on a trip last year and they spoke about, videoing yourself, doing training sessions, doing competitions, just showing off your skill set along with having the academics to go with it. But you're the expert. What are some of the suggestions you would offer maybe a teenager now, asking that question?
So the first thing I want to say is definitely keep your head up. Like, one of the most important things to realize is that like college coaches aren't necessarily, like for track especially, they're not looking for you to make it to champs or a champs final. You don't actually have to compete at champs to get a scholarship. For like a football, you don't actually have to win, you don't have to make it to the Manning Cup finals, or you don't have to make it to any finals really to get a scholarship. It really is just about strategy. So I want the athletes right now to focus on strategy. Like you said, the video, having video is really important. So for like a skill-based sport or a team-based sport like football, like for any like a basketball, you want to focus on having video. So you can go back and find any of those games that you'd have played in, those matches you'd have played in that has video. You want to have those to be able to send to coaches. And I think for track, you want to be able to have your stats. So you want to have stats that are legit, or like win legal stats that you can find online, because coaches want to see those. And you basically want to be strategic about the schools that you are now going after. So before camps, what would have happened, or before the pandemic, what would have happened would have been that student athletes were really waiting for time to get seen by coaches. So they would have just kind of waited around and hoped for the opportunity to get an opportunity. However, now that we're in the pandemic, it's showing that you have to take that initiative. You have to be the one to say, these are my grades, these are my stats, these are my skills, and I'm going to put it in front of the coach that wants to recruit me as much as I want to get recruited.
Yeah. I remember, like I said, it was a visit to United States last year, and just having that tour on the International Visitor Leadership Program, and they spoke about that. How do we get, though, a lot of our athletes to target schools that, it's not I'm not taking hit at any particular school now, but Jamaicans are known to go to LSU, Auburn, etc. How do we get some of our athletes to, if they're not being recruited, like how do they know which school to look at with their skill set and capabilities, and their talent, I should say, along with their academic capabilities?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing I want to say is be open. Those top 10 schools that kids usually go to from Jamaica that we know about, those aren't the only schools out there that are offering scholarships. On the Division I level alone, there are more than 300 universities that are offering scholarship. And on the Division II level, you have a little bit about the same or less. However, those schools are still offering scholarships. So first you want to be open, and then you just need to start doing your research. So the best strategy that I can give to any student athlete is to start by thinking about what program you want to pursue. And then you can simply do a quick Google search and say, what do I want to study? If it's business administration, look up the universities that offer business administration. Then what you can now do is go over to their athletic program and see, okay, what conference is this school in? I would write the word down, conference, because that's really important. What conference is that school in that offers the degree program that I want? And then now say, okay, what would it take to get a scholarship from a school in this conference? So figuring out how your stats play a role in this conference. How would you do in this conference? What value you bring to this conference? For football, you basically want to start with, or like for a skill-based, team-based sport, you want to kind of do the same thing. However, you're not going to be looking for your times and how they match up in the conference. You're simply going to, I would say, just start reaching out to these coaches, see where these schools rank and say, okay, today I'm going to reach out to the top 10. The next day I'm going to reach out to the top 20 to 30 and really just continue reaching out to schools at similar levels to see which coaches are willing to have that conversation with you, are interested in viewing your stats, your videos to basically further that conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Christopher.
Okay.
Neville? All right, we'll wait for my co-host in just a bit. Is Daniel slowly on with us?
Hi, present.
Daniel, are you here? Hi, Daniel. So Daniel, formerly of Immaculate Champs winner in the shot put. Hi, Daniel. She's now representing Clemson University. Quickly run us through how that has been going for you.
Well, any semester under COVID, whether high school or university, it is rough. Mentally, you have to just keep going. You have to be motivating yourself day after day after day, and it really teaches you a lot about how your environment facilitates motivation. Because before, I had all my friends around me who were working, and everyone was just working towards a goal. And now I'm just by myself in a room, staring at a computer screen, trying to get myself to do a degree. And it is rough, but it is possible.
How has it been? You know, like you said, it's challenging for everyone, but you're not outside of the comfort of being, you know, at home in Jamaica, being around Coach Franz Ford and everyone, just that homely feel. How is it for you in that environment, having to do this all on your own? Yes, there's a support, of course, with your teammates and so on there at Clemson. But really, university college is about you. You have to be disciplined for you to get the grades, to get to training and keep pushing. How is it going for you in that aspect?
Well, it is really a learning process in terms of developing the sense of responsibility to know that you're on your own now. No one is going to breastfeed you. No one is going to hand you anything on a silver plate. You have to work for what you want. You have to schedule your own events. You have to prioritize, whether it is, I wouldn't say going out because there's nowhere to go, but you just have to go. There's nowhere to go. You just have to prioritize. You in yourself have to establish what you want, as I said earlier, and just knowing what you want is enough motivation, well, for me, to just go after what I want. And I also do keep in contact with my friends and family from Jamaica. Sometimes it gets really rough and I'm just by myself in these four walls, and I just need to hear a familiar voice, see a familiar face, just remind me of my upbringing, remind me of where I'm coming from, so that I can get the motivation to go where I need to go.
Yeah. During the time of getting a scholarship, because I know it's very difficult at this period, was it difficult for you to get your visa and all those things, you know, to go on? I know the process because of the COVID and the lockdown at the time. What were some of the challenges you faced when you were looking to leave?
The main challenge or the main obstacle was really just to get your student visa from the embassy. It was a lot of back and forth. We had to be checking the media. We had to be checking the website. And it was just a lot because at the time we didn't know what the Mr. President at that time was doing. And it was nerve-wracking, especially for us in our last years. We just didn't know Well, for me, I knew where I was going, but I didn't even know how I was going to get there. I didn't know if I'd have to train in Jamaica. I didn't know anything. It was just a really nerve-wracking time. But I must say that getting your visa from the embassy was probably the most interesting experience. Because even when I went, I didn't get my visa the first time I went. The athletes that went there the day, I think about about 6 athletes went and got through automatically. Everyone else got, I think it was a green paper. And we were all so nervous because we're like, green paper? Does that mean I'm not getting my visa? Like, what does it mean? But you really had to be in contact with whatever university coach or whatever administration body was there, because they were the ones you'd have to liaison with to get the necessary documents. So for me, they needed proof that we weren't just online based, because at the time they were just rejecting anyone who was fully online at the time. And Clemson said that they'd have a hybrid class structure, but it didn't say that on my I-20. So I had to get another I-20 that specifically stated online in order for me to get through. And that process in itself was nerve-wracking, and I can't imagine it for anybody else.
And my final question to you, Danielle. Clemson been in the spotlight in recent times, and clearly not for football, but because they have decided that they're going to cut a men's track program. Did you get nervous when they lean towards a sex, or maybe thinking like this could maybe come over to the girls' side? What went through your mind at the moment?
It was honestly a shock. The entire situation was shocking. It came out of nowhere. No one knew that it was going to happen. Even the way they told us, they told the coaches, like you'd say at 12 o'clock, and then the coaches told us at 1 o'clock, and then by 2:30 it was just out there and it was just in the media. We were so shocked. It really had us thinking. We just did not feel secure at the time. We're just like, well, evidently they're going to cut it from track and field first, because they're not going to touch their footballers, because football is the cash cow of the school.
Yeah.
So really, it did interfere with our feeling of security at the school, and I can't imagine how the boys must feel if the girls feel like this.
Are you on edge now, though, with that process? Because it's clearly like it can happen at any time. Are you on edge, or you're just making light of the situation?
We have to make light of the situation, because no matter what, our season is confirmed. Well, our indoor season is confirmed. And as it stands right now, everyone understands that we need to be in the mindset to go out and compete, so that no matter what happens, we have secured our place, or secure our standard, so that even if we are to leave, or the boys are to leave, that they can go to somewhere that can carry on their standard.
All right, thank you so much, Danielle, for speaking with us. But I have some questions. Keith Wellington, president of ISSA, and like I told you, he's also the principal of St. Elizabeth's Technical. I have a question for you, Mr. Wellington. Are you here?
Mr. Shala, I'm still here.
Okay, so the question coming from social media is regional championship an option?
Meaning champs going regional. I'm assuming
yes, versus maybe everyone.
Well, we actually have regional championships now. There are clearly defined regional championships. So Western champs, Eastern champs, Central champs, corporate area champs. So we already have regional champs.
I think what they mean is maybe can have. I think maybe what they mean is, since we maybe in eventuality of not maybe being able to have everybody together at the stadium for champs. I'm assuming.
Well, there are going to be some adjustments. They are going to, I wouldn't want to say everything here, because we still have a couple meetings left with some of our key stakeholders. And within the next 2 or 3 weeks, our entire plan may be made public. But let me put it this way. We currently have 4 regional championships. Those will play a key part in determining who comes to champs. And champs will not have, we will not have the 2,500 athletes that we normally have at champs. We are looking at making adjustments. We will make adjustments to the schedule. So we already have a tentative schedule that will see the number of students participating in champs greatly reduced, and the number of days any one athlete will be required to be at champs will also be greatly reduced. So we are working through the process of putting together our plans for champs. We have been having discussions with the Ministry of Health, and we have a technical committee, we have a safety and health committee working. We have met with our sponsors, our media partners, we have met with our principals. We're part of our technical committee. We have representatives from the coaches groups. We'll be meeting with our coaches next weekend at their annual meeting. So we are putting the plans in place, and once it's safe to do so, as I said before, we're looking at a March champs. If it's not yet safe at the end of March, then we'll look at our May dates.
Okay, because like I asked you at the top of the program, I spoke to a few coaches that are asking if champs should be held, why not be held over the period in maybe April, May, because some are not yet training or having the youngsters in training like they would want to because of the pandemic, parents losing jobs, etc., etc.
All right, so obviously, again, I think we're keeping everything, all of that in mind. But we also have to accept that we cannot expect to have our champs like we've had it. So the 7 months of preparation or the 6 months of preparation is just not available. We have to look at what best suits all parties. So remember, champs is about athletes. It's really about the student athletes. But in order for champs to go on, you also have to have other partners that are willing to put it together. And so we have to come to a compromise. My personal preference, I would say, it is May. My personal preference would be that give them time to prepare. Let us see what happens in May. But I think when you take everything into consideration, look at all the options available, what are the pros and cons for each stakeholder, we have to look at all the options. And right now, we are down to an end of March date and an early May date. We are planning for the end of March here because obviously you can't think about March and not start planning for it. It could be May, but starting to plan now for May is not an issue either. So we start planning now. We pressure ourselves into putting in place all our plans for March. But if it can't work and it for the end of March, then we have an extra 5 or so weeks to play with.
Yeah, and this is for all sports, high school sports, manning the Costa Cup, swimming, tennis, everything, planning as you go along. Because we're not solely focusing on boys and girls champs, even though it's one of the main events. You know, we're speaking, Mr. President, for all sports.
For all sports, we are looking at a plan for all sports. We have already shared a timeline with our principals where we look to resume in February and go up until late May, early June. So we're looking at a plan for every single sport. We won't have the competitions like we normally have them, but we want the students who are involved in the various sports, whether it be track and field, basketball, volleyball, table tennis, swimming, hockey, every single one of those sports. We are looking at how we can get students involved this school year in these sports. And as I said earlier, we would love to have these physical events, but if it can't work, we will also revert to virtual events.
Okay, thank you so much, President Keith Wellington. Krista Forbes, I have a question for you. Are you here?
Yes.
All right. Okay, quickly, we are close to wrap up time. Can you run through quickly, the NCAA requirements? I know it's sometimes a long list, but make it short and spicy for the Jamaicans listening.
So I would say that the requirements this year are going to be a little bit different from what they usually have been. So the biggest difference this year is going to be, and probably moving forward, is going to be the SAT score requirement. So that requirement so far has been suspended in terms of the need to have those. However, students are still going to be required to have a base GPA of 2.3. And for Jamaican student athletes and Caribbean student athletes, that GPA is going to be calculated by your C6 scores and potentially your CAPE scores. So you're going to want to make sure that, like for C6 students, we want to make sure that students who are sitting the CSEC exams, they're doing a math, they're doing an English, they're doing a science, they're doing a social science, which could be either geography, history, social studies, and they're doing an additional area. So it could be like an extra additional English, it could be religious education, it could be a foreign language. So right now the focus is going to be on your C6 scores and then your GPA that is going to come from those C6 scores.
Okay, thank you so much, Krista, for that. So I know it's always, tricky for a lot of persons, the uncertainty as to what really make up what are really the requirements for those seeking scholarship or want to get scholarship in terms of subjects, the CSEC scores, what might go with what division, and so on and so forth. So thank you for that information.
No problem.
All right, so we are, like I told you, 90 minutes of good chatter with our wonderful presenters. Like I said, I know you love Neville and I, but our experts have spoken, and I'm sure we had them answered as much questions as possible for the 90 minutes. But we have come now to an end of the Dominic Alessandro James Foundation COVID Youth Town Hall. And we hope you enjoyed your time with us. Let me check if my co-host is back. Neville, are you back? All right, seems as if we have really lost Neville. We know how it is. It's difficult with the Wi-Fi. So like I said, thank you so much to all our presenters. And I'm going to give a big thank you to our presenters before we have a person step in. So Keith Wellington, the president of ISSA, David Riley, coach, Dr. Crystal McGregor, sports management, Dr. Claudia Marshall, psychologist, Dr. Derek McDowell, sports medicine, Krista Gay Forbes, scholarship advisor, Andre Virtue Ballers Academy, and also Daniel Slowly, current student athlete at Clemson University. Thank you guys so much for keeping the company for 90 minutes and providing your expertise on this topic. And that's all we have for you on the virtual town hall. We're going to have some special proceedings. Stay tuned. Thank you. Good night.
Welcome. Thank you for having us. Yeah.
down, and oh, my soul so weary. When troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence till you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. Raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me